Surprise! I told a few people that my next video was going to be about this really funny bootleg movie I found, but that's going to be shelved for now because it's almost Halloween. That special time of year when the nights start getting longer, everything becomes pumpkin spice flavored for some reason, and every YouTube channel under the sun does the Halloween special. And as I ruminated on those facts, it occurred to me, hey, I have a YouTube channel, I should do that. So I picked Saw, one of my favorite horror franchises, and today we're going to review all 9 of them. Even the bad ones, which is most of them. We've got a lot of ground to cover, so I won't waste any more time. Let's start off, of course, with... Okay, I said I wouldn't waste any more time, but I forgot one more thing. I realized I can't really rate these movies with a normal scoring system because these aren't normal movies. It's pointless to spend too much time discussing things like the plot, the acting, or the cinematography because this is Saw, those things don't matter. So instead I've created a new scoring system for the things that do matter in Saw. Each movie can get up to 3 points for the special effects, up to 3 more points for the likability of the main character, and up to 4 points for the creativity of the kills and traps, which adds up to 10 points total. Got it? Good. Anyway, the first Saw is pretty okay. At the time it was a really interesting idea and it heralded the dawn of a whole new genre of mainstream horror, with similar shock movies like Hostel coming out soon afterwards. But despite the reputation the Saw movies have for being nothing but mindless blood and gore, the first movie is actually really tame as far as horror movies go. A lot of the violence is shown off screen or gets cut away from, but when we do see it, it looks mostly pretty good. The razor wire maze is a little goofy, but when this guy gets cut open and all that, it looks fairly convincing. A lot of people remember this movie for being the one where the 2 guys wake up chained in a bathroom and have to cut their feet off to escape, and that does happen later in the movie, but we don't see much of the actual cutting, just Cary Elwes' reaction and this guy grunting as he does it. Speaking of this guy, this is the best character in the whole series. His name is Very Fucking Confused.
What's your name? My name is Very Fucking Confused. What's your name?
Do you get it? Do you get the joke? He's played by this guy Leigh Whannell, who co-wrote this movie, and if you recognize him, it's probably because of his illustrious acting career. He was in movies like The Bye-Bye Man. Most of the scenes that take place in the bathroom are pretty good, but Cary Elwes is doing all of the heavy lifting here. A lot of my criticisms of this movie can be more or less chalked up to the fact that it's really low budget. Like, this might be the worst car chase scene I've ever seen. And there's a lot of parts where we keep flashing back to the same scene over and over again, and it's really obviously just to pad out time. I think most of the budget went towards the reverse bear trap scene and paying Danny Glover to somehow be in this movie. So the entire movie, these guys are in the bathroom and there's a dead body in the middle. Everyone here is being tested for some reason or another, like Cary Elwes had an affair and Very Fucking Confused spies on people or something. And we're led to believe that this guy who's been watching them the entire time is the one who's testing them. But then at the end it turns out that this guy's getting tested too, and the dead body was the bad guy all along. We never find out what this guy was getting tested for, not in this movie or any of the sequels, but I do admit this twist is pretty great. The first time I watched it, I had absolutely no idea what was going to happen, and yeah, it doesn't make too much sense when you think about it, but the movie does an alright job of, helping your suspension of disbelief. I give the first Saw movie a 2 for special effects, 3 for the main characters, and 2 for the trap creativity, a decent 7 out of 10. Saw 2 is probably my favorite in the series. Lots of, great kills, lots of good effects, lots of Donnie Wahlberg acting. But without a doubt, my favorite thing is that we get to see more of Jigsaw himself and we learn a bit about what motivates him. There's a lot of scenes of Jigsaw and Donnie Wahlberg just sitting and talking, and they might be the best scenes in the series. But we're not here for the good acting or character studies, we're here to watch a bunch of unlikable characters get killed in crazy ways, and Saw 2 does this so well. Amanda from the first movie comes back alongside a bunch of new characters, including Donnie Wahlberg's son, who all have to survive their own traps and tests in order to get an antidote to the poison gas they've been breathing. Most of them do not succeed. This girl in particular is a complete idiot. She just throws away the piece of paper that tells her what to do and sticks her hands in this box lined with razor blades like it's no problem. And then she gets stuck and decides to put her other hand in. Like, why did you do that? Now you're just completely stuck. And then she fumbles and drops the antidote too. It's so funny. This guy gets burned up because he didn't stop to look around and see the valve that would have saved him. This guy cuts off skin from the back of his neck only to immediately die. And half the characters that act intelligently get killed off by the ones who don't. There's a lot of cool traps in this movie, like the needle pit or even the razor box, which is cool in concept but gets ruined by the most stupid character in the movie, and the effects are good enough and have held up enough to still be a little hard to watch. At the end of this one, it's revealed that Amanda was working with Jigsaw the entire time, and that the whole Poison House game actually took place days before Donnie Wahlberg and Jigsaw had their talk. I don't know if it's as effective as the first movie's twist, but I still think it's pretty good. I give Saw 2 a 3 for special effects, a 2.5 for the main character, and a 3 for the trap creativity, for a nice total of 8.5. Saw 3 is where I'm going to have to really cut down on what I showed and not get age restricted, which is a shame because this is where the traps get really cool. Literally the first thing we see is this guy ripping hooks out of his skin and then he gets blown up. Almost immediately afterwards, we see this detective from the first 2 movies get ripped apart. Saw 3 doesn't mess around, it gets right into it. Saw 3 knows what we want. We get more John Kramer, a lot of great traps, the effects are still great, but what really bogs this movie down is the main character. The main guy we're supposed to sympathize with is this guy Jeff, and he sucks. He spends the entire movie walking at a snail's pace, taking his time and yelling at other characters that are in danger instead of saving them. Most of his tests revolve around making sacrifices in order to save the lives of those that were involved in the drunk driving accident that killed his son, like the driver, a witness who refused to testify, and the judge who passed a light sentence. All their traps are really cool in concept, but fall apart when you realize that they all could have been saved if Jeff didn't move so slowly. She could have been saved if Jeff had just grabbed the key from the beginning. He could have been saved if he wasn't such an idiot, but alright, that one wasn't Jeff's fault. And he could have been saved if Jeff had spent more time going for the key rather than crying. Jeff is seriously so annoying to watch that every time I watch this movie, I spend more time yelling at him to speed up rather than enjoying the admittedly great effects and trap designs. It's to the point where I feel like the only reason he goes so slow is to pad the running time. Also, Jigsaw dies in this one, which is admittedly kind of surprising since we still have 6 more movies about him to talk about. I give Saw 3 a 3 for the special effects, a 3.5 for the trap design, and a 0 for the main character for an overall 6.5 out of 10. I don't really like Saw 4 that much. Even by Saw standards, nothing really makes sense. The main character is this guy Detective Rigg from the first few movies. He's alright. Jigsaw's reason for testing him is that he's too obsessed with saving Jigsaw's other victims, but he's a cop. That seems kind of in line with what he's supposed to do. What's wrong with that? A lot of the traps here are also really good. This guy gets dismembered, this girl almost gets her scalp taken off, lots of great effects going on. Donnie Wahlberg is back from the second movie in decidedly worse shape, and we're introduced to a few other characters that aren't too terrible. Agent Strom is one of my favorites in the franchise, and Detective Hoffman is a really fun twist antagonist. However, I think the bad outweighs the good in Saw 4 for the most part. The traps are scattered across the city, so Rigg literally has to drive from scene to scene, which is really funny. The traps here are cool, but there's just not a lot of them, and since this is Saw, that makes my overall rating take a pretty big hit. We also see a lot of characters from the past few movies die, like Rigg, Donnie Wahlberg, and Jeff from Saw 3, which really just feels like the writers want to make room for new characters in the next movies. Overall, Saw 4 feels like filler, even by Saw standards. It doesn't do enough of what makes Saw so enjoyable to me. I give the special effects a 2.5, the trap design a 2, which would be a 3, but there's simply not enough of them, and the main character a 1 for an overall 5.5 out of 10. Saw 5 is way better than Saw 4. Mostly. It feels like a nice return to form for the series, with another group elimination trap plot and fun detective subplot like Saw 2. 5 has one of the best opening scenes in the series with the pendulum trap, followed immediately by Agent Strom from 4 having one of the coolest trap escape scenes in the series, with him giving himself a tracheotomy. It's nasty, I love it. This time around, the traps actually involve everyone in the group rather than everyone having their own test, which makes for some good tense moments on the first watch as you try to figure out who's going to survive and who isn't. I really like this moment where everyone has to unlock these holes in the walls to climb inside and survive an explosion, and this guy doesn't get to one in time, so he yells, "Wait!" Like, what do you think is gonna happen? Wait, don't explode yet, give me 10 more seconds. Their first trap is kind of cool in concept, but when it actually kills someone, it's not impactful at all. The effects are less than convincing. And their final trap is kind of lackluster as well, where they find out they all could have survived if they had just thought about their situation for more than just a few seconds, and now we watch the last two stick their arms onto some blades and yell for a bit. Like, ooh, ah. While that's all happening, Agent Strom is trying to prove that Hoffman is Jigsaw's secret apprentice, and Hoffman is trying to frame Strom. At the end, Strom and Hoffman have a little fight, and Hoffman gets thrown into this glass box, which we think is going to kill him, but oh no! That was Hoffman's plan all along, and now Strom gets crushed. Upon first watch, this ending is really frustrating because Strom, a genuinely kind of likable protagonist, comes so close to winning but throws it all away at the last second. At least the effects here are pretty good. Saw 5, in many ways, feels like more of the same, but I think that's preferable to whatever Saw 4 was doing. I give the special effects a 1.5, the trap design a 2.5, and the main character a 2.5 for an overall 6.5 out of 10. It's better than 4 and around the same level as 3, but for different reasons. Saw 6 is the best one since 2. Every death and trap is cool in its own way, the effects are mostly on point, and the plot, though is pretty on the nose, is probably the most interesting in the franchise, which of course isn't exactly a high bar to reach. This time around we're following this insurance guy William, who refused Jigsaw coverage for cancer treatment as he literally decides who at his company gets to live and who gets to die, in a very thinly veiled critique of the American insurance industry, which was an especially relevant issue in 2009. The opening trap has these two moneylenders literally giving up a pound of flesh to survive, which is perfectly ironic in the way only Saw can get away with being. Then this guy gets his ribs crushed, this guy gets hanged from barbed wire, and William has to choose 2 of his 6 employees to survive getting blasted by a shotgun. It's peak over-the-top Saw violence, and despite it being a little ridiculous, I absolutely dig it. While all that's happening, Hoffman is trying to stop the police from realizing he's been the Jigsaw apprentice all along. It's not the best police subplot in the series, but it's still enjoyable to watch him go all Terminator on these guys. At the very end, William gets confronted by the widow and son of another guy who he refused insurance coverage to, and while the widow forgives him, the son decides to take revenge, pulling a lever that injects acid into William's bloodstream. Aside from the hilarity of seeing Roderick kill someone...
No, Brad! You killed my father, you motherfucker!
Look, Mom asked me to give you some advice about middle school.
This death is definitely one of the most gruesome and metal in the whole franchise. It's interesting to see the formula get turned on its head. In most of the other movies, the protagonist dies because over the course of the movie, they don't learn the lesson Jigsaw wants them to learn. But in 6, William genuinely sees the error of his ways and becomes a better person, only to die at the hands of an external force he had no control over. We love subversion of expectation in this household. Saw 6 gets a 3 for the special effects, a 4 for the trap design, and a 2 for the main character, giving it an overall rating of 8 out of 10. 2 and 6 are the best in the series. I hate this movie. Saw 3D sucks. This opening trap is stupid even by Saw standards. Like, why are you hitting the glass with the broadside of a soft leather purse bag thing? What do you think that's going to do? The effects in this one are the worst in the series by far. It was meant to be seen in 3D, which means all the blood is a weird shade of pink and nothing looks real at all. The second trap is also really dumb, but it has Chester Bennington playing a skinhead and I can't help but love it. The Chester Bennington part, not the skinhead part. The protagonist is this guy who kinda looks like Paul Rudd. His name is Bobby. Bobby is terrible. Bobby is worse than Jeff, and I already said that Jeff was the worst. Bobby's getting tested because he lied about surviving a Jigsaw test, and John Kramer gets mad about it in a really funny flashback. Like, why is he dressed like that? Is it supposed to make him look younger? All of Bobby's tests revolve around saving the people that have helped him promote his fake Jigsaw story, and in concept the traps are pretty cool, but in execution they're really meh. This girl bleeds to death from wounds in her throat that we don't see, this girl gets spikes put through her face and the pink blood completely ruins it, and this guy gets hanged. It's not even a cool barbed wire hanging like in Saw 6, it's just a boring normal hanging. I haven't even mentioned the cop subplot yet because the new cop character is annoying and he gets shot really soon anyway, so it doesn't matter. Hoffman kills Jigsaw's ex-wife, and Bobby fails the final test, which gets his wife killed in the single worst death scene in the entire franchise, since she's the only character who never actually did anything wrong. At the very end, Gordon from the first movie locks Hoffman in the bathroom, also from the first movie, and is revealed to have been secretly working for Jigsaw the entire time, which is kind of cool actually. Saw 3D only has like 3 good scenes. Chester Bennington, Cary Elwes coming back, and Jigsaw wearing a hoodie and backwards cap. I cannot stand this movie. It gets a 0.5 for the special effects, a 1.5 for the trap design, and a -1 for the main character. That's right, Bobby is so bad I'm taking away a point. Saw 3D gets a 1 out of 10, and now that I say that out loud, it feels like I'm giving the movie too much credit. I don't really like Jigsaw either. It's not as mind-bendingly terrible as Saw 3D, but it's just so boring. None of the traps are particularly interesting, none of the characters are very likable, and the effects range from passable to just decent. Jigsaw was meant to be a soft reboot of the franchise, and it tries to do some weird timeline retconning and what I think is supposed to be meta-commentary on the series, but it all feels very ham-fisted, like the writers were just a little too proud of themselves for writing it. A lot of the plot elements are borrowed from the other movies. There's the group trap plot where all the characters have something in common that they learn about as the movie progresses, like in 5. There's a cop subplot where the Jigsaw apprentice tries to frame one of the detectives, also like in 5. At the end, the detective misunderstands his test and dies after a confrontation with the apprentice, also like in 5. And there's a twist reveal of someone having been the secret Jigsaw apprentice all this time, just like in 2, 4, and 3D. Obviously, I'm not expecting incredibly unique or interesting storytelling from these movies, but all the previous movies Jigsaw is biting from did the things they did so much better. There's not a lot to be said about Jigsaw without repeating my criticisms of the previous movies, so instead I'll try to point out some of the positives. I think this is an alright modernization of the series, despite some anachronisms that I don't think were intentional. I think some of the gore is pretty good, especially this face melting scene, which I can only describe as gnarly. The final trap is both the most over-the-top in the series as well as one of the coolest in concept. What really kills this movie for me is the apprentice reveal. We're supposed to believe that this guy has been helping Jigsaw since the very beginning and no one except Jigsaw actually knew about him. It was already a little ridiculous when they did that in Saw 3D, this time it's just dumb. Jigsaw gets a 1.5 for the special effects, a 2 for the trap design, and a 1 for the main character because I'm not actually sure who the main character is supposed to be, for a total of 4.5. It can only get better from here. This might be an unpopular opinion in the Saw community, but I actually rather like Spiral. It was different in a refreshing way, which was entirely the point since, aside from mentioning Jigsaw a few times here and there, Spiral has nothing to do with the rest of the Saw universe. That's right, we're getting a Saw cinematic universe, I guess. This time around we've got a copycat killer who's specifically targeting police officers with some really cool trap designs. This guy gets his tongue ripped off right before he gets hit by a train, this girl gets burned by wax, this guy gets his fingers almost ripped off and then electrocuted. In concept, these traps aren't the most creative in the series, but I'd be lying if they didn't make me squeamish, even after being exposed to and numbed by all the other movies in this series, and that's got to count for something, right? The main character is played by Chris Rock, which I didn't initially know how to feel about when the first trailers dropped, but after watching the movie, I think he did a pretty good job. He's certainly a more interesting character than some of the other Saw protagonists. His dad is played by Sam Jackson, who seems like he's just having a blast. The acting is decent across the board with the exception of this girl, who I just don't buy as this strict, badass police captain character. Maybe it's her lines, but she doesn't seem like she wants to yell or be mean even when the situation calls for it. One of my favorite things about Spiral is that the world it takes place in actually feels open, expansive, and lived in. All the other Saw movies have a claustrophobic, closed-in feel with lots of dark blues and greens, while Spiral uses more bright and warm colors like reds and yellows, which not only makes the world feel more varied, but it makes the tone much less one-note. I think Spiral did a lot right that the franchise has definitely needed, but on the other side of the coin, it does have its own share of flaws. I don't think all the attempts at humor landed quite so well, despite Chris Rock's obvious genuine effort and investment in the script that he co-wrote. The twist is one of the more predictable ones in the series since the killer is revealed to be a character who was ambiguously killed off-screen, something that this franchise would never do for no reason. The whole series is about showing off nasty and gruesome deaths, so of course the one death it doesn't show is going to have a bigger purpose. I also don't know how I feel about the cliffhanger ending, especially since we might not ever get a proper follow-up to this movie. Overall, Spiral gets a 2.5 for the special effects, a 3 for the trap design, and a 2 for the main character for a nice 7.5 out of 10. Saw fans, please don't kill me for that. Saw is a weird series. If you watch them as if they're normal, actual movies, they don't hold up very well at all, but they can be really enjoyable if you take them for what they actually are. A bunch of dumb characters getting killed in crazy ways, and man, is it fun. Except for Saw 3D, that movie can burn. This was a pretty long video. Now that I've finished talking about these movies, I don't think I know what to do with my life. I hope you found some enjoyment in my inane ramblings. Thanks for watching and have a happy Halloween.